Good day. My name is Lebum Tembu, and this is Africa Talks Business, live at the ESG Conference at the Santon Convention Center. We are currently joined by Mr. Joshua Lowe, organizer of the ESG Conference. Mr. Lowe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. So I'm curious to know, why did you start all of this, and what do you hope will come out of this conference?
So we started about 2 years ago. It's what we call our passion projects. Myself and my colleague Wendy Poulton, who is the chairperson of the South African National Energy Association. She was head of sustainability at Eskom for 30 years. My background is trade fairs and conferencing, but we both share a passion for sustainability. And we wanted to create a platform where we could grow awareness around ESG and sustainability and really try and deliver impact through what we do. Which is why through the conferences we raise money for charities that are ESG related. We did a student innovation competition trying to raise money for innovative students and to showcase them at the events. We do online networking sessions once a month. We get people from around the world to come together. So it's really about growing awareness and sustainability and delivering impact.
Right. Why do you think ESG is so important for companies?
I think ESG is so important because, if we're going to move forward, and I was just listening to a keynote address by Gareth Ackerman, who's the chairman of Pick and Pay, and talking about, if we want to create the future, there basically will not be a future if we don't take ESG principles seriously now. And I think the biggest problem is that ESG gets such a negative rap, and people refer to it as woke capitalism, and they focus on compliance things like, how good is my ESG report, and they look at it from a tick box exercise. But no one can argue with the benefits of ESG, so responsible governance and the impact that can have, especially from an African continent point of view. The environmental things, all the climate change related issues we have, like the floods in Durban a few years ago, the droughts we're seeing in other parts of Africa, and the social element, which I think gets quite often overlooked, but at least ESG gives you that focus to focus on all three elements. Whereas when we talk about sustainability broadly, it becomes quite a difficult beast to look at because it's such a broad topic, and people quite often just focus then on the environmental aspects. But with South Africa and Africa, if we look at the social dynamics, it deals with social inequality, it deals with diversity, it deals with things like access to healthcare, clean water, those sort of things, empowering communities. And for me, that element is actually more important than the E and the G. If we don't get that right as a continent, we can forget all the climate-related and other problems that we face.
Right. I remember it was quite earlier, Evelyn talked about how important it is that, the way she phrased it, she said that ESG is the right thing for businesses to do.
Yeah.
One of the main messages that I was able to gather being in that room, there is value in doing the right thing. There is profit in doing the right thing. And you were just touching on the benefits right now. So if you could perhaps just go a little bit further as to what you think the benefits are for businesses to have an ESG strategy.
So, I'll give you some examples. And there is this thing that, when I speak to people and they look at ESG, it's like an added on thing. And it's a tick box exercise. And we actually did an article about a year ago talking about ESG going beyond compliance and the benefits that companies who are taking it seriously and they embed it into their culture and their strategy are realizing from a profit point of view. So there's commercial benefit in taking ESG seriously. If you look at the environmental aspect, look at some of the projects that SAB have done, for example, in terms of water reduction. That's helping the environment, but it's also saving them costs. If you look at the social impact projects, diversity and inclusion, there are a lot of studies out there that show that if you have a diverse and inclusive workforce, your business performs better overall, you're more attractive to good talents, you keep talents, and you generate bigger profits. And obviously governance is for me, is the overarching thing. It's your governance structures, your reporting structures. If you've got proper sustainable governance structures, you are more sustainable as a business. So ESG makes business sense. It's not just a nice CSI thing, or it shouldn't be an add-on thing. It should be seen, the companies that are leading the way across the continent in this space, that take all those principles seriously and embed it, are seeing better performance than their peers in the same industry.
What do you think are the top ESG risks that Africa, and perhaps even the world as a whole, is currently facing right now? And how do we go about addressing those?
Well, I think just following on my previous point, about companies looking at it as a tick box exercise, it's all about resource allocation. And I think Evelyn spoke about it from Safaricom. If you need to dedicate resources, you should have an ESG team and a sustainability team who should have the mandate to drive those initiatives. But what we've seen a lot of organizations, they don't really have a team driving it, or they'll just appoint someone because they need to have a head of ESG. So it's a tick box exercise. So for me, the biggest risk is that companies focus on the day-to-day stuff. They don't take a longer term view, and we don't start dealing with some of the issues we face, which if we don't deal with now, are going to become really big problems in the future. If we don't deal with climate change now, if we don't take serious steps now as businesses and as government and other stakeholders across the continent, we're going to have serious problems. If we don't address social inequalities, access to, as I said, water, food, we're going to have big problems in the very near future. So those are the biggest